Good morning, Heavenbound family, and all that might be listening. This is Pastor Larry on this Monday. Might say this snowy Monday, or anyway, maybe it'll be quit before this morning or sometime today. We have been studying, this is, by the way, Monday, the 15th of February. We're halfway through the second month of 2021. The year is speeding by. We have gotten down through the fifth seal, and I believe I have shared with you before, but if not, we will share it now. The first five seals deals with man's devastation, or man's cruelty, or man's persecution against man. Everything that happens in the first five seals deals with man dealing with man. When we get down to the sixth seal, it's like God says, okay, fellas, you've had your say, now I'll have mine. Dr. David, or Dr. Adrian Rogers says there's going to be a great cataclysmic, if I can say that word, disaster is going to come upon the earth, something that only God is able to control. In Colossians, the Apostle Paul says that Christ created all things for his pleasure, and that by him all things consist. Well, it's like that Jesus, at this point, opening the sixth seal, says that I'm going to let things fall apart. And things certainly begin to fall apart. Let me read to you the sixth seal here. It says, "And I beheld, and when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake." If you go back to Matthew chapter 24, in verse 7, there it talks about one of the things that's going to happen in the tribulation is the great earthquake. Remember, we talked about the fact that in Revelation 24, verse 6, we have the rider on the white horse. In verse 7, we have the rider on the, let me go back. Verse 4, we have the rider on the white horse. Verse 5, we have the rider on the red horse. Verse 6, we have the rider on the black horse. And verse 7, we have the rider on the pale horse. And then we go down, verses 8 through 14 points out that there's going to be a time of great persecution, as we read about in the fifth seal there, and that there's going to be great earthquakes in verse 7. And that finally we get down to verse 13. He says, all that endure to the end will be saved. In verse 14, he points out there that, by the way, should we say, speaking of the tribulation saints. And then in verse 14, he says, during that first 3.5 years there, the gospel of the kingdom is going to be preached. Once Christ takes the seal, seven seal book, title deed to the earth, no longer will the gospel of grace be preached, as we've already said, but we'll preach the gospel. They'll be preaching the gospel of the kingdom during those first 3.5 years. We come down to chapter 6 here, and in verses 12 through 17, it said, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casting her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heavens departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their place. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth upon the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? The sixth seal is going to take us all the way down to actually down to chapter 14. Now we will look at chapter 7, which again speaks of the sealing of the 144,000, which is also in chapter 14 there. So the sixth seal will introduce the seventh seal, which will introduce events that will take us clear to chapter 14. But notice, going back to Jesus explaining in Matthew 24 what was going to happen in verses 4 down through 14, as we already said, he explains what's going to happen through the 3.5 years as the Antichrist comes to power. Now then, the sixth seal, and notice in Matthew chapter 24, verse 29 through 30. Jesus said, immediately after the tribulation of those days. What days? That first 3.5 years. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened. Now, let me say real quickly, this doesn't happen at the end of the 7-year tribulation period. At the end of the 7-year tribulation period, Christ takes up his reign, his millennial reign. So we're talking about what has happened in the first 5 seals. There immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the signs of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, just like here we're talking about here, the rich and poor and so forth. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And so in this sixth seal is going to take us down into the second half of the tribulation period. As the middle of the tribulation period, as we said, God is going to begin to deal with this earth through catalytic events. There, the nature is going to seemingly rebel as Christ seemingly lets go and lets happen whatever happens without him holding restraint on it. And so it's going to be a time of great tribulation, leading all the way up near to the end of the tribulation there, when men are going to cry out for mercy. Man has always believed in God or a God. And when they come in time of trouble, they remember him, and then they begin to cry out. But in this case, they're not crying out for help from God. They're crying out to hide us from the fury that the wrath that God is about to bring upon them. This is Pastor Larry with a moment in the Word on this Monday. Go forth today. If you can get out and get up and down the roads, have a blessed day. Bless someone. If you can't get out, call someone and just encourage them. It'll bless you, it'll bless them, and it'll bless God. And God, in turn, then will bless you as well. Hope you have a wonderful Monday and enjoy the blessings of God.